have eroded any sense that the stewardship of our country is still public, and yet it is. We have to come back from this disconnect and act in good faith again. See to it our voices are heard, our ballots are counted, and our will be made manifest. I feel like everyone needs to do their part to make this happen. In this instance, my part was to gather this collection of powerful voices and compelling arguments and offer them a conceptual frame and platform. Politics can be deadly in theater, admittedly, so to avoid too much soapboxing, I chose not to start with special interests, but instead with broad strokes. I wanted topics that were built like nesting dolls, big on the outside, but layer upon layer of reveal all the way down to the minutiae. I wasn't looking for pieces on specific topics that carried a particular message. Rather, I was looking for artists who were messengers and for the pieces to be whatever they would design to carry their message. So I started by selecting a definition of the word politics, and I went for something very simple: the debate about, or a method for, the distribution of power and resources. That definition alone immediately offered 4 questions. What's the debate? What's the method? What's considered power? And what's considered a resource? I took these 4 questions and I related them first to notions of Bay Area identity. I asked, what is the Bay Area's method? Well, booms and busts are our history, gold.com biotech, so our method is innovation, constant change. What is our debate? Probably the most debated idea in the Bay Area right now is the radical shift in demographics. Statistically, there is no cultural majority in our region, and yet we don't want to acknowledge this paradigm shift, so we argue fiercely about what's right and where to go. What's our greatest resource? I believe it is the sheer physical beauty and potency of the land itself. What is our greatest power? My money's on the progressive values and capacities of the people living here. So I took these Bay Area distillations and used them to sketch a cultural landscape of our region, i.e. the things we think of as core values: ethnic diversity, physical beauty of the land, thirst for innovation, and progressive social values. Then I made a grid by crossing them with hot-button topics being discussed during this election year: the environment, the seat of power in our government, immigration and human rights, such as a woman's right to choose, and LGBT civil rights. Each of the artists selected was someone I could locate on this grid, arriving at the intersection of one of our core cultural values and political hot button. For example, Joe Kreiter on my grid exists at the intersection of progressive social values and the seat of power in our government. And Leto sits at the corner of immigration and thirst for innovation. So that was my process and what guided me. There were many people to choose from, and curation is, at the end of the day, all about really difficult choices. Here's what it came down to in the end. I firmly believe that these particular artists are culture bearers and innovators. They carry forward our most deeply held beliefs through their creative practice, and they advance our capacity for growth as a society by explicitly voicing the unspoken or illuminating what we all can see but often don't want to look at. Each offers a mixture of gritty realism and imagined worlds, incessant hopefulness and critical analysis. And each of these artists has made a major innovation in their chosen field, so they know what it's like to have mastered something and also improved it. This means at some point, each of these artists had to be willing to locate themselves within an identity, be it aesthetic, cultural, or socio-political, which they went on to radically transform, staking a claim to something built on history, but totally new in the world. Regardless of their individual works in the festival and the triumphs I believe each has achieved, these are people we can learn from on a whole different level. What they have done as individuals is what I hope we can do together for our country: examine the past, locate our beliefs, and innovate a new way forward. So again, that was a message from Rob Baliis, who could not be with us this evening, about his curatorial process in putting together this festival. So where we're gonna, and you can read that message online at counterpulse.org/blog, where you can also comment on it. So what the rest of the evening is gonna look like is that we are going to ask each of the panelists to introduce their work and talk about their work in relationship to these ideas in about 10 minutes. When we're done with that, we're gonna have a little bit of conversation amongst ourselves, and then we're gonna open it up to all of you. We'll have a microphone coming around so that you can join in the conversation, bring in your own work, your own experience, your own opinions. And then while everyone is all excited and hot and bothered, we're gonna cut it off so that we can drink wine, eat snacks, and continue to talk in an informal atmosphere. It's really important that we get to do that. But while we're in the more formal atmosphere of all seated here, I want to let you know that we are recording this to podcast on our website, which means that if you have something to say, please take the time to speak into a microphone. It really helps all of us, and it also helps us hear each other. So I'm not going to go into long introductions because I think that the work really speaks for itself. We're going to go in the order that the pieces occurred in the festival, which means that first we're going to hear from Jo Kreiter, and her company is Flyway Productions. Take it away, Jo.
So every summer my family, my brothers and sisters and I get together and we have a big dinner. We leave our children at home and we go out and we have an adult dinner. It's something I really look forward to every year. And so this last summer, after I had won a Creative Work Fund grant, which is kind of a big deal, after I got my very first NEA grant, and after I'd gotten, I don't know, one more thing that happened last year that made me really happy. My brother-in-law and sister sat me down at this dinner, this really nice dinner, and they said, Jo, we really think, you're in your 40s, we really think it's time that you stop doing this dance thing, and you run for public office. And I thought, wow, they have no idea what I do. They just don't know. So what do? I run a dance company, and I run an arts organization, and those aren't necessarily the same things. One of them is far more bureaucratic than the other. But I create work that supports women artists. That's one of the primary things that I do. I think that I'm the only dance company in the country that commissions exclusively women artists as composers. And that's not always an easy thing to do. It's not that easy to find contemporary women composers, and I'm really proud of that track record. We are a company of all women, though our riggers are almost exclusively men, because there's very few women in that field, and it's something that I search for, and there are a few riggers here and there. I dance off the ground with my company. Sometimes that's 2 feet off the ground, sometimes it's 100 feet off the ground. And my interest there, I describe my work as apparatus-based dance. I have a particular love of steel, and kind of like a welder does. It's not that uncommon. You're laughing, but it's not that uncommon. And I'm really interested in the integration of experimental form, which dancing on steel is, with social and political content. And one of the third legs of my work is that I create site-specific work. About half of my work is in the theater, as this last piece was, and half of it is outside somewhere. We've danced off a crane in the middle of the bay that was used to produce copra, which is the inside of a coconut. We danced on a live billboard, and perhaps I'll show you a little clip of that. We've just done a lot of different things outside, and the politic there is really the democratization of public space, in that you're bringing contemporary art that's very developed in its aesthetic and thoughtfulness to an audience that doesn't necessarily see that work or seek out that work. And in my opinion, there's a great democratization of access there that I'm also very proud of. I'm not alone in doing that, and I come from a lineage of both aerial and site-specific work via 15 years as a dance artist with Joanna Hygood's company, and a lot of what I know comes through her wisdom. And I also continue to have a relationship with her company through teaching, which is another level of art and politics for me, which is bringing dance to kids in the public schools who really don't have access to dance in their after school lives. They barely, a lot of these kids have parents or not parents who work 2 jobs, and so access is a huge deal in terms of the arts. And I mean, there's so many artists in the city that do this. It's one of the best ways we make our living, but it is a political choice to keep that work going for myself. Let's see, what else did I want to say? This piece in particular came about through a couple different streams. One of them, how many people saw the piece, just out of curiosity? Okay. It's called Lies You Can Dance To, and it came for me as a response to wanting to do something about the war. And we never mentioned the war in the piece, but I really wanted to do something to encourage an audience to develop a more personal relationship with citizenship.